The system isn't designed for ADHD brains, and you'll hear me say it again and again. And I use system as an umbrella term to cover structures like school, work, and society, all that clash with how your ADHD brain operates. At the heart of that system is capitalism, and in many ways, capitalism is hostile to neurodivergent individuals. This means that having ADHD creates a complicated relationship with capitalism. And this is something that really frustrates me because it holds back ADHDers from starting businesses, when in truth, it's actually the reason that you should start one. And the problem is just a common misunderstanding. Most people think commerce and capitalism are the same thing, but they aren't. Commerce is the buying and selling of goods and services. It dates back as far as bartering in ancient civilizations. Global capitalism, on the other hand, was born in the late 18th century, and this was about 250 years ago. Capitalism is not commerce. It's an economic system. It's a way of organizing commerce. It fosters inequality, environmental degradation, and mass consumerism. It takes more value from workers' labor than it actually pays them. It allows business owners to keep that extra profit. So by design, it promotes inequality. And for this reason, it often triggers that inbuilt sense of justice in the ADHD mind. Now, when you add that to the fact that the structures of capitalism make ADHD a disadvantage in so many ways, it's really easy to see why you might not want anything to do with it. The problem is that because commerce exploded during the capitalist era, the two concepts kind of became entwined in people's minds. Yes, individuals can of course misuse commerce, especially within a capitalist framework. But commerce on its own is not the problem, it's neutral. And this distinction is really important because we live in a time where the internet allows anyone with ADHD to escape those systems using commerce. So I'm sharing this because it directly connects with productivity. It's something that you need to understand to be productive as an ADHD entrepreneur. Capitalism hijacked the definition of commerce. It did the same thing to the definition of productivity. It rebranded it under a hustle culture narrative as being busy. So to be productive as an ADHD entrepreneur, the first thing to do is to understand this. Commerce is not capitalism. Productivity is not being busy. Productivity is being efficient and effective. Productivity is getting the maximum result with the minimum input of your time and energy. It is the opposite of being busy. To be productive, you need to change your view of productivity. Then you need to build systems from scratch that are designed to work with your ADHD brain. Because the simple truth is this: traditional productivity systems don't work for ADHD entrepreneurs. In fact, they leave you in a damaging loop. You have bursts of creativity, followed by overwhelm, procrastination, and also, quite a lot of the time, guilt. And this happens because most productivity hacks are hustle focused. So if you have ADHD, they rely on something that you don't have, a neurotypical brain. They depend on sustained focus, delayed gratification, and rigid routines. They're essentially anti-ADHD, so they leave you feeling that success is always just out of reach. And this isn't your fault. Think of it like this: sustained focus, ADHD brains thrive on interest-driven engagement, not monotony. It's not a possibility. Delayed gratification, ADHD brains are wired for instant feedback and quick wins. Rigid routines, flexibility is what fuels ADHD creativity, but these traditional structures stifle that. So what it comes down to is this: reject traditional productivity models and escape the cycles they cause. Instead of forcing yourself into ill-fitting systems, you need to create adaptive ones. Build systems that align with your strengths. Redefine productivity as doing meaningful, effective work. Lean into your creativity, lean into your divergent thinking. Build systems that prioritize effectiveness and efficiency, not being busy. This is your ADHD advantage. It's a creative rebellion of sorts. Productivity as an entrepreneur with ADHD simply requires you to lean into those strengths. You just need non-traditional productivity systems that work with your brain. And to really drive this home, I want to take a system that productivity gurus absolutely love, and that's the Eisenhower matrix. So in case you don't know how the Eisenhower matrix works, you take your to-do list and you pop it under 4 boxes. 1 urgent, 1 not urgent, 1 important, and 1 not important. But it's very designed. It requires strong executive functioning skills, which ADHDers don't really have, and the ability to easily prioritize information based on importance, right? ADHD brains have neither of these things. That triggers the cycle. Try the hack, fail at the hack, internalize the failure. Again, none of which is your fault. You just need productivity systems that are actually designed for you. And I've spent years creating ADHD-aligned systems to boost productivity in my business. And over time, I found that there's 4 key areas of productivity if you're an ADHD entrepreneur. First, knowledge acquisition and skill building, then energy management, then sensory hacking, and then, the most important, digital leverage. Building systems for each of these has allowed me to build a multi-6-figure ADHD-owned business, and I'm going to give you a framework for each one. So let's start with knowledge acquisition and skill building. So recently I've received a bunch of compliments on the quality of my Instagram videos, and this started after I finally invested in a good camera. Full disclosure, I have a deep appreciation for cinematography. I absolutely love it. But honestly, I really know very little about cameras. Despite this, within a week of buying that camera, 1 week, I'd shot and posted my first video, and the feedback was exceptional. But behind the scenes, I'd only spent 25 minutes learning how to use it. And given the quality of that video content, that might have been surprising. And I'm not sharing this story with you to brag. I'm simply telling you it to make a point. So remember our productivity formula from earlier. The best result from the least time and effort. This story about my camera is that story in action. And that's because to build a business, you do need to acquire knowledge and skills. The problem is that in school, you're taught that learning knowledge and learning skills requires rote memorization. You learn that gaining knowledge and skills requires routine, focus, and delayed reward. You're basically instructed to absorb large amounts of information, and then your success is measured by how well you can recall and regurgitate that information. And this is another faction of the system that works against your ADHD brain. This way of learning is a direct conflict with your need for novelty and engagement. And this is one of the many reasons if you have ADHD, you might have found school challenging, or even, like me, might have been expelled. So this is the traditional learning style, and I call it passive learning. And passive learning doesn't work if you have ADHD. So this might sound counterintuitive, but the best approach for skill building as an ADHD entrepreneur is actually to not study. ADHD brains thrive when they are active, so you need project learning instead of passive learning. Project learning is hands-on, it's going to leverage your hyper-focus. It aligns with your need for novelty. You replace the binge watching of tutorials with a framework built to be efficient and effective, our productivity formula, okay? So with that in mind, I'm going to give you the project learning framework. So as we know, productivity is not doing more. It's achieving the best possible results with the minimal time and energy. Like with my camera, right? You ditch the endless studying. You focus on the doing. I could have lost days or weeks even learning shutter speed or aperture or ISO settings. I would have definitely just become quickly overwhelmed or bored and just lost interest. Instead, I only watched 1 video and I didn't even watch the whole thing. The video was on how to use my specific camera to shoot cinematic, talking head style videos for short form content. I capitalized on my hyper focus. I rode the motivational novelty drivers. I dove in and I learned hands on. And that is the essence of project-based learning. Here's how you master it. Step 1, define and outline your skill project. Think of it like this. When you're learning how to cook, you don't sit and read 10 recipe books. You get your hands dirty in the kitchen. Apply that same logic to your knowledge and skill acquisition. Whatever skill you're trying to learn, turn it into a project. So with my content, I wanted to make those cinematic short form videos. That became my skill project. Define the skills and knowledge you desire in the simplest possible form and start a project to get those skills. Step 2, learn the foundations and only the foundations. Research and consume only what you need to start. And at first, this is going to be uncomfortable, but this is actually a good thing. Growth is defined by finding comfort in the uncomfortable. Jump in and start doing your skill project as soon as you can. Learning content creation, make a video. Learn only what you need to start the actual recording. Learning copywriting, write a sales page, a first draft for something that you plan to sell. Learning branding, create a color palette. Research the fundamentals of color theory and start creating. Right, we're trying to stay in that creative zone as much as possible. Then the next step is to tackle your gaps, learning by doing, because that is what will reveal where your knowledge and skill gaps are. So when you identify a gap, you just research what you need to close that gap, and then you move forward. Then you keep going. You come back to your project until you uncover the next gap, the next thing you don't know. Then you get the knowledge to know what you need, and you repeat the above. When I built my first website, I literally just researched the simplest possible website builder, and I landed on Wix. Again, I just watched one video called something like how to build a website on Wix, and I just jumped straight in. Was that website good? Absolutely not. No, in fact, it was actually terrible. But I quickly discovered the exact skills and knowledge I needed so that I could make it good. And again, this is that productivity formula in action. This is effective and it's efficient. It's learning as you go and aligning to your ADHD brain. Then next, you zoom out and you repeat. So imagine once more you're learning to cook and steak is on the menu. Once you've learned to cook that steak, you apply the skills you learned to making another recipe. New recipe equals new obstacles, new gaps equals new skills. The same applies to acquiring knowledge and skills as an ADHD entrepreneur. After you complete one project, using that skill, start another to build on it to improve it. Then repeat the steps above. This is the fastest, most ADHD-friendly way to learn any skill without overwhelm and without burnout. The next system that you need is for energy management. And I'm not a fan of the idea of time management, not just because my ADHD brain measures time by now or not now, but also because I see time as another construct that holds back ADHD brains. The idea of getting more done in less time is what builds the concept of time management. Again, that's just being busy, it's not being productive. Managing time won't serve you. Managing your energy will. Energy management is the peak of the productivity formula. Managing your energy means only using energy that is necessary. What if I told you that you could make your ADHD brain 10 times more productive with this simple change to how you manage your to-do list? It's called the 5UD framework, and this is how it works. So you start with the magic 5 to-do list. You write out your to-do list and you write 5 next to anything that takes 5 minutes or less. Then you start with those. This removes 6 tasks in 30 minutes. Each one of those tasks is going to give you a dopamine kick, jumpstarting your motivation. Next, you write a U next to your urgent tasks. Schedule a time block in your calendar to do those urgent tasks 2 to 3 days from now. In the calendar event, add a link to a podcast episode or music or whatever, something that you're excited to listen to. My current favorite podcast is How to Take Over the World, and I only listen to it when I'm doing those urgent tasks. We're harnessing the reward motivator in order to get those urgent tasks done. This creates anticipation. You're looking forward to doing your urgent tasks because they're connecting to doing something that you enjoy. And finally, you find your domino. This is your key focused project. This is the needle mover. The thing that when knocked down creates the most progress towards your biggest ultimate goal. Say for example, that right now that goal for you is building a social media audience. You write a D next to any of the tasks on your list that directly contribute to that goal. You spend the rest of the time you have on those tasks. That is your domino project. Once you complete the tasks, review your list and find your next domino. And repeat this weekly, 5U domino. Add the new tasks in a different color. Then have a look at your updated list. Whatever remains on it literally doesn't matter. If it doesn't take under 5 minutes, if it isn't urgent and it doesn't contribute to your major goal, more often than not, it's probably just procrastination. Then we move to the sensory hacking system. So despite running my business from home, I get dressed up, I wear a suit every single day. Then I grabbed my weird productivity weapon, a fragrance. And this started about 6 months ago. I hyper-focused on sensory marketing, and that led me to scent branding. And honestly, I can go on and on about this because it fascinates me, but I'll keep it short. Sensory marketing uses all 5 senses to enhance the customer experience and ultimately shape perception. Scent branding is for identity and consistency, and that concept sparked an idea. If brands are using signature scents to reinforce identity and consistency, would that work for me? Can I use a personal fragrance to trigger my subconscious into that work mode identity? A signature scent that I only use when I'm working on my business. Spoiler alert, it worked. And it worked like a charm. And this is essentially harnessing the ADHD sensory sensitivity and making it an advantage. Simple practices that turn sensory cues into productivity tools. So from there, I decided to experiment with all 5 senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. I found things like this that work for each, and then I created a sensory hacking system. So for sight, visual clarity, take the minimalist approach. Avoid clutter wherever possible in your environment. Usually your desk, computer, laptop, pens, notebook, water, only the things that are necessary. And look, I get it, ADHD and all, but try your very best to at least take the cups to the sink once or twice a week. Body cups, on the vibe. We don't want that in our sight sensory part of our sensory system. Focus anchors, add intentional visual stimuli. Lighting is everything, aim to work in natural light and blue lighting as it stimulates focus. Never, and I repeat, never use the big light. Then minimize distractions. Do not disturb is your new best friend. If you have an iPhone, I assume Androids probably have it too, but I don't have one, so you tell me, I have no idea. But you can set tailored settings for your do not disturb. So I've made one on my phone called hyperfocus. Only my family have access to me in case of emergencies, and only through phone calls. Set some of these up that work for you and use them. Then sound, tailored soundscapes. Create playlists for different work moods. Use high energy beats for motivation. For me, it's dubstep. Love dubstep, or something like lo-fi to calm focus. These are just suggestions, find what works for you. Then noise control. If you can invest in noise cancelling headphones to block out the world, great, do so. Create a listening environment that you control. Then use auditory cues. These are specific sounds as triggers. For example, a specific song to start your workday. This creates a natural step into a productivity ritual. And embarrassing nostalgic bangers are encouraged, so Work by Britney Spears, definitely a personal fave. Then we move to touch. Get yourself some comfort-based furniture. Don't take your comfort sitting down, pun intended. Use comfortable, ergonomic chairs and desks that are going to feel good on your body. And then of course, wear clothes that feel great. Yes, I wear suits. I love that for my productivity mindset. But they are super soft as well as stylish. Make me feel good on the inside and they make me feel good on the outside, and that projects into my productivity, into my work. Then taste, get a snack hack drawer. Plan for the hyper focus. Stock up on crunchy, protein-rich snacks to boost your energy. Keep a drawer near your desk for easy access, so when you're in hyper focus, instead of not eating because you don't leave, it's just right there in the drawer. And finally, smell. Again, use sensory cues. So for me, that fragrance is only the start. You can add essential oils to diffusers or incense or non-toxic candles. Then you can use these in your workspace, but only use certain ones when you're doing work. And then the final system, and this is probably the most important, and that is digital leverage. So I've actually spoken about digital leverage in a previous video in detail, but here are the key points. Digital leverage is non-negotiable for productivity for ADHD entrepreneurs. It's essentially using systems, tools, and automations to manage your executive dysfunction and minimize your overwhelm. It is the pinnacle of our productivity formula. Productivity equals efficiency and effectiveness. So here's how to master digital leverage in just 4 steps. First, list tasks that you perform regularly. Then break those tasks into steps. So write out each involved in completing those tasks. Then document that process. Create a checklist for each task so it's easy to repeat. And finally, choose tools or automations, platforms, software to remove yourself from as many of the repetitive parts of that process on your checklist as possible. So productivity isn't about doing more, it's about doing what matters. It's getting results effectively and efficiently. And capitalism may have stained commerce and redefined productivity as busyness for most people, but don't let it do the same for you. Commerce is the exchange of value. It offers your ADHD brain a chance at freedom. Understand this distinction and you can reclaim your autonomy. Stop trying to fit into a world that wasn't designed for your brilliance. Instead, create systems that work with your brain instead of against it. Build a life and a business that aligns with your values, not the values imposed on you by hustle culture. You have the power to redefine your success. not only for yourself, but for others watching you, as inspiration as you rewrite the rules for your brain. You can harness your ADHD mind as an advantage, as long as you work with it and not against it. So if you found value in these frameworks, first, I encourage you to try them out. Second, comment which parts of this stuck out to you the most, and like and subscribe so that you never miss a video. And finally, if you're an ADHD brain who has a business or wants to start one, I strongly recommend checking out the ADHD Entrepreneurs StarterKit in the description under products, along with some other free stuff that you can grab and some other really cool resources too. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. And until then, remember, the world may not be designed for the ADHD mind, but the ADHD mind is designed to change the world.